The one thing that I would say that you get at Super Meeting that you don't get at a meeting with just 30 people is the opportunity to network. And it is called the Nexstar Network for a reason.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of The Den. This is kind of a little bit of a different edition because it's only going out to really a select group of people, and that's the Nexstar community. We are very fortunate to have in The Den this week a master trainer. I'm going to ask a little bit about that in a minute, but I want to introduce to most of you probably at some point or another as a Nexstar member, you've had the opportunity to probably touch base, feel, shake hands with Dave Boduch of Nexstar, probably one of the longest trainers that Nexstar has in their portfolio. So Dave, welcome to this edition of The Den.
Awesome, Bill. Thanks for having me. It's super excited to be here.
This edition of The Den is a little bit different because obviously we got a big meeting coming up in Super Meeting this year. And so I think it's always great to kind of evaluate how do you look at making a great Super Meeting. So first and foremost, why don't we just, there might be members that are newer that haven't had the opportunity. Why don't just give a 30,000 foot about who you are, what you do, what your role at Nexstar is, just so that the audience can have a little bit and maybe a background as well. And then I always like to get my den started with some rapid fire off the wall questions.
I'm looking forward to that, actually.
They're gonna put you on your toes. So
all right.
Background.
So I started in the trades as a co-op student in high school. And a lot of people nowadays don't even know what a co-op program is because they just don't exist anymore. Basically what that meant is I could leave school early and I could go work and make money. And I ended up finding my way into the trades in that regard. And I got my first job in the trades in 1994, and I never left that company for 25 years. I stayed there for 25 years, from a co-op student all the way through college and then post-college. Eventually owned a portion of that business called AJ Dan Boys out in Farmington Hills, Michigan. And in 2019, I left that business to become a full-time trainer. And let me back up a little bit. In 2004, we became members of Nexstar. And in 2006, I had the opportunity to go try out in Florida and be a member trainer, which meant that I would leave my business once a month or so, and I would go train classes for Nexstar as a member, but also as a trainer. And so I was a member trainer for Nexstar 13 years before I became a full-time trainer. And one of the things I always said about Nexstar is they are the highest performing group of individuals I have ever been a part of. And then I came on full-time and I realized the ramifications of that, because they are the highest performing group of people I've ever been a part of. And so now I'm, sorry, go ahead.
No, I wanted to, I cut you off and I apologize about that.
No.
You say high performers. I look at it as they're some of the smartest business people that I've ever met, as far as just understanding that you're not just a performance of a trade. You're a human resources company, you're a logistics company, you're a marketing company, that you have to have all these different things tied in. And when you're talking some of the companies within Nexstar, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 million dollars, there's some serious play going on behind the scenes in leadership and coaching, and not just, hey, can we put this install in the right way, but how do we take care of the overall consumer journey? I just think that, some of the people are incredible in what they do.
Well, and I agree with that. And at every level, even the people that are behind the scenes that you don't get to interact with on a regular basis. I mean, the coaches and the trainers, we're out front, we're very member facing, but the people that are behind the scenes are just as smart and just as driven. And I think to that point, Bill, is because we've got this collection of individuals, we're constantly helping each other improve behind the scenes too. And so it's been an amazing journey for me since I've joined Nexstar. Although the timing just before a pandemic wasn't the greatest time to become a full-time trainer, but that in alone, I think helped us as an organization become better, because now we offer online training, and that wasn't even on the radar. And that just kind of tells you, the organization and the power behind it is, we knew we had to do something to be there for members and to train for them and to help them through that time. And then boom, online training came about in just a few months. And now every single week we have an online training going on.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You obviously touched base. I'm curious on a question. When you joined Nexstar as a member trainer, how
Mhm.
many members were at Nexstar at that point in time? And I think you said there's over 1,000 now. So I'm just curious to where the growth
Yeah.
of the organization has gone.
Yeah, well, let me take you back even farther if I can, because
Yeah,
Nexstar
sure.
was founded back in 1992. So this year's Super Meeting is actually very significant because it's our 30-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And back then it was 16 members that started out. And I think when I first became a member trainer back in 2006, I think we were around 200 or 300 members.
That's crazy. That's crazy to
Yeah.
see the type of growth.
And now we're gonna be, like I said, we're over 1,000 members, and that continues to grow.
That's it. That's incredible. Before we kind of dive into Super Meeting and
Yep.
what it's all going about, I always, there are probably some members in the audience that haven't had the opportunity to meet, and this might because of pandemic, they recently joined, whatever it might
Mhm.
be. So I always like to make sure we get some rapid fire questions in to start things off.
I'm ready.
For some of them, people that are in the audience, they don't know you are a huge Michigan alum and fan. Okay.
Yes.
My
Go
first
blue.
question is, what is it like to see a football game in the big house?
Um, it's hard to describe. It is 105 to 110,000 people all in one place, and you just walk in and it's awe, and the band is playing and the people are riled up. And if you've never been to Ann Arbor, the university is built right on top of Ann Arbor, so it's one and the same. And so there are tailgates going on everywhere, and everybody's in the maize and blue. I'm lucky enough now. I actually live in Ann Arbor. We moved back here just a few years ago, and my favorite thing now is I get to take my son to games, and we get to see them play together. Last year, I had him down on the field after we beat Ohio State, and his mother probably wanted to kill me after that. But how many opportunities did you get to go down on the field with your 11-year-old son, and after an Ohio State game, nonetheless? So it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Who are your top three favorite athletes to come out of Michigan?
Ooh, top three favorite athletes. So you're going to be surprised because Tom Brady is not one of them. Um, I would say Braylon Edwards. I loved watching Braylon when he was
Yeah.
at Michigan as a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Um, man, I haven't even really thought about that. I mean, going way, way back, I am a huge Jim Harbaugh fan.
Yeah.
My dog's name is Jim. We were talking about that. I think he would be another one. And then, well, Charles Woodson. The last time I was on the field at a Michigan game was 1997. It was my first year at Michigan. We went on to win a national championship, but that Big Ten game against Ohio State and rushing the field there, got to see Charles coming across the field. He got his rose in his mouth, and so Charles Woodson, only defensive player to ever win the Heisman. It's got to be pretty good.
Definitely. Most people don't know that Michael Phelps actually
Yeah,
went to Michigan.
yeah.
And then you can't go not athlete, but you can't look at Barstool Sports without thinking of Dave Portnoy going to Michigan as well.
Yep.
Super Meetings, obviously, it's kind of like I think the holy mecca of getting together and celebrating the years and learning and education. And now obviously, it's being a 30-year growth for Nexstar from your perspective. What's the best location that you've ever been to for a Super Meeting?
This is hands down. Marco Island is ridiculous. It's unbelievable. So Marco Island has been the one that my favorite that I've been to. And what's interesting though, we have so not to go off on a tangent here, but we've got members have always loved the national events, and we got rid of Leadership Spotlight, which was an event that we used to have, and we've replaced it because of member feedback, wanting to what you had mentioned when we were talking about networking and having a beer, and you learn more in that 5 to 9 p.m. conversation at the bar than anything. The networking retreats that we have now, the last one we did in Lake Tahoe was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that would be another one that I would mention. But the first one that came to mind was Marco Island.
So let me caveat that for 2 seconds. And
Mm-hmm.
it goes to my second question, which, while I'm kind of ad-libbing here for a second, is who's the best speaker that you've heard at a super meeting? My caveat was I was at that retreat, and the way that I've explained it to members that I've spoken to is that, like, the retreat, and I think it's an incredible opportunity. It's like going to a destination wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
instead of getting like 5 minutes with a counterpart, you had half hour, 45 minutes where you could have a conversation with a Wyatt Hepworth.
Yeah.
And these members that have, grown their business and they've been successful, they're willing to share information at an unbelievable pace to a guy that's doing 2 million. I call it the egoless environment. There is no ego amongst the members, because I think the one thing they truly recognize is they were at that point at some point in the business venture. And so I think it's great to have that, whether it's on the retreat side where it is a more intimate setting and being able to experience it for me, because hearing that anything is possible, to hear that speech, and to hear what one individual has done, I think kind of embodies really what Nexstar is about, is that one company can share for a multitude of visions of other companies. And I think it's a special environment that, people, and that's the whole purpose of why I wanted to be able to speak to you today, and be able to share with the teams, because preparation planning is so huge for any individual coming to this show, and we'll get to that. Back to the question was, what's the speaker that you've heard?
I mean, without a doubt, John Maxwell. John Maxwell, I think that you could just, pluck him out of a crowd one day and ask him to talk for an hour, and he could just do it. And you'd fall in love with everything that he had to say. And so I was lucky enough 2 super meetings ago to have the opportunity to do some Q&A with him. I actually wrote down while I was there. It's funny. So while I'm on stage, he said this to me. He said this to the group, and I had to write it down. Big people make you feel big when we're with them. Small people make you feel small when you're with them. And so I'm literally on stage with John Maxwell. I'm like, hold on a second. I got to write that down, because that's just unbelievable. And so he for sure would be the best I've ever seen.
One last question, and I'm sure that everybody's got to know the Mets jersey in the background. You got to help us out with that.
So I am a huge New York Mets fan as well. I grew up in Jersey. And my first T-ball team was the Mets, Sparta, New Jersey.
Sparta, New Jersey. Okay.
Yeah. And so I've always been a Mets fan. I'm hoping they'll hang on to first place, but it's September, and that would be the Mets, right? So my wife's friend was dating the marketing manager of the New York Mets. And so she was down at spring training camp. And that year, Tom Glavine was actually a part of the Mets team. She got Tom Glavine to sign this Mets jersey. And, if you know anything about baseball, Tom Glavine is a Brave. Like, that's it. He is a Brave. So to get Tom Glavine's signature on a Mets jersey, personalized, that was the best gift ever.
So, all right, let's get to super meeting.
Yeah.
Let's talk first and foremost to the members. Every super meeting has a different theme. Every retreat has a different theme. What's the theme we're bringing to the super meeting this year?
The theme this year is all about how teams help our organizations grow, and how important it is that we focus on our people in our organizations, in building those effective teams, whether they're the teams that we have in the field, our management teams. And so a lot of the conversation is about growing great teams.
Growing great teams. Okay, perfect. So like I said, when we kind of were going through our pre-prep call, is that one of the things I want to do is say, hey, what are the 5 action points that from inside Nexstar, as far as what we believe, from a vendor partner standpoint, what are the things that we can give to the members to say, man, this will make you have a super meeting like no others by setting yourself up for success. So what I want to do is try to kind of come up with a 5-point game plan to say, with knowing that teams are going to be an integral part of the super meeting, what are a couple of different points that we can give either pre-show, during show, and post-show? Because I always say going to a show is great, taking notes, being in class, being engaged, meeting with people, but the failure to implement once you go post-show is probably the biggest failure, even just in regular training as a member, that you send your techs off, but yet you're not following up with them. You send people off for service, service sales, and then you're not following up with what did they do? How are they doing? All those different things. So what are, from your experience and being to a bunch of super meetings at this point in time, what would be your kind of key points that you would say to a member, I recommend doing the following things prior to the show?
Yeah. And it's interesting, as I was thinking about this, I train every week. And so I'm working with small groups, not 800 people like we'll have at Super Meeting, but 30 to 100, depending on the group. And I don't know that there's a huge difference of how I would approach a 3-day training with 30 people and a 4-day training with 800 people. The one thing that I would say that you get at Super Meeting that you don't get at a meeting with just 30 people is the opportunity to network. And it is called the Nexstar Network for a reason. And I think that to not take the opportunity to, yes, spend some time with the people that you know and have met in the past, but spend some time and meet some people that you've never talked to before. Spend some time and get to know the other members that you've not had an opportunity to learn from and to share it with, so that they can help. So networking would be number one. Making that time and taking that time to get to know other members, learn from them, and share with them. One of our mantras at Nexstar is success through education and sharing. That happens outside the general session. That happens outside of the coaches' breakouts on Tuesday and on Tuesday and Wednesday. So networking would be number one. Number two is engage. Engage with your coaches, engage with your trainers, engage with the content, engage with the resources that you have on the Nexstar website. But we know as Nexstar employees and staff that the companies that have success are the companies that are engaged. They are taking advantage of all of the resources, not just some of the resources, but all of the resources. So engage in the tools. Brian Buckley and Gresham Ard are going to be talking, two of our Nexstar coaches. They're going to be talking specifically about Nexstar tools that are available. Don't wait. Go online and engage with those tools as soon as that day is over. Learn a little bit about them. That way we can work with you on a coaching level too. So engage is the other thing.
And I look at it from a different perspective as a vendor partner. I think that number one is divide and conquer. I think it's a great key, because you have all of these different sessions, but to have multiple people sitting in the same session, I think is really kind of a waste of the resources that are there. Plan out your activities that you're going to go see the digital coaches, go see your marketing coaches, go see Service Titan, go see all these different sessions, break it out amongst your team that's going to be there. And if you're one person going, I highly recommend to you, bring somebody else from your company. Take the opportunity to say, let's get multiple people at the event to be able to divide and conquer and be able to understand what's being happening in not just one session, but there are multiple sessions going on at the same time. And the more education that you can get, the better off you are. So, outside of engagement, outside of networking, I think is divide and conquer.
Just one note on that too, Bill. I totally agree with that. Divide and conquer, because there's a lot of information. We joke at Nexstar, it's kind of like every event is like drinking from a fire hose. And so how can you take all of that in? Well, divide and conquer for sure. But how many opportunities do you have to go to an event and see a speaker or see somebody who's presenting information and know that when you get back home, you have the ability to pick up the phone and call that person and set up meetings with these people to get additional insight so that they can literally coach your company to success. I mean, that you can't get that, right? And so to your point, divide and conquer, figure out what you want to do, but then tap in and engage with those resources.
Yeah, education doesn't end at the end of the show. It continues on well beyond it.
Yeah.
It's just a showcase for the opportunities that the gathering of people.
Yeah.
I always like, and you think about what's the average, revenue of a Nexstar company. I believe it's somewhere in the 7.7, 7.8
Mhm.
range.
Yep.
Think about that. There are 1,000 companies. That's over a billion, well over $1 billion in revenue
Yeah.
that's out there. And I think that there's just so much. People have already experienced maybe the problem you're having if you're at 2.5 or you're doing 3.7 or you're at 4.8. They've already experienced it, and they're so open to share. As I said earlier, I think it's really it's a good thing.
Yeah.
When we talk about networking, how do you recommend that? I think it's the ultimate cold call to walk up to. For me, one of the first shows that I had, I heard this guy that had this towering voice. He's like 6'6", towering voice, standing in the corner, and I'm like, that's Keith Mercurio. I want to have a conversation with
Mhm.
him about what he has going on. And so it's the ultimate cold call to go up and say, hey, I'm going to go talk to Brad Spear. And Brad will give you his time. Wyatt will give you his time. Dave Geiger will give you his time. Probably the most down to earth man that you're going to meet at Nexstar that are
Yeah.
willing to give you their time. I highly recommend to any member that's out there to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
What are the things that you would kind of say now that you've come to the show and you've gathered all this great information, you made good networking? How do you recommend for the members that they handle post show?
Well, all right. So you kind of alluded to the fact that education doesn't stop, right? And I always say that in any training, uh, you know, change does not happen at super meeting. Change does not happen in training. Change happens when you begin to implement. And so post training, a couple of things, I think, three things that I would say. First, evaluate, um, you know, what you have been doing and what you haven't been doing and why. When I do trainings, I talk a lot about our brain, and our unconscious mind wants to keep us safe, and it wants to do things as easily as possible, right? And so it literally doesn't want us to change. And a gentleman by the name of Rod Harrison, I'm sure you've heard of, he says the most powerful force in human nature is to adhere to your own identity. Literally, your mind doesn't want you to change. And if your mind doesn't want you to change, your organization isn't going to change. And so evaluating, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do that? And what's been holding you back from doing it in the past? Because any of the members that you just mentioned, not one of them is going to tell you that they got their success easily. Like there's no such thing as easily growing to $100 million company, easily grow. That's not how they got there. But they have a plan, and they worked that plan, and they had failure too. And so evaluate what's holding you back from implementing these things, because the conscious mind, it can evaluate or justify, and we love to justify why we shouldn't or can't do something. We'll justify everything all day long, why we can't do this, why Peterman can grow as fast as they have, or why Radiant or Any Hour can grow as fast as they have. We'll justify all the reasons. Oh, well, they're in a different area. I mean, how many times have you heard it? Well, this isn't going to work in our market. I mean, if I had a dime for every time I heard that. So evaluate why you haven't gotten to where you want to go and what you need to do to get there. And then the last thing I would say is commit. You mean literally make a commitment, and not just to you, but make a commitment to the people in your company, and make it verbal. So that they can hold you accountable. Because I think it's really easy to sit there in a chair at super meeting and say, well, oh man, that sounds great, I want to do that. And then the next thing that you do is you go back on Monday, and now you've got all these fires to put out. And we totally lose track of the fact that maybe we went to super meeting to find out why there are fires to begin with. And we go right back to our shops and we start putting fires out. And we forgot that we actually learned some concepts that would help avoid those fires from happening altogether.
Yeah, it's interesting, because if you've prepped to say, where am I failing my company, as far as, and that's the hardest thing to look at when you look in the mirror at yourself, to say change is the hardest thing as a human nature and a behavior. It's kind of like when I go to the doctors and he says, hey Bill, you might want to make some lifestyle changes. I know what he's saying. He's saying, get on the Peloton bike and ride, dude, because you're gaining a little too much weight.
Yep.
So you have to be open to And I think that openness to vulnerability of what you have in your organization and what you don't have in his organization, and being self-aware of where your strengths and weaknesses are going to help you to gain something out of this particular super meeting if you evaluate it.
Yeah.
You know, I know that you have a tremendous amount going on prior to the show, and you obviously made it very much open for me to be able to spend some time with you. I have two final questions that I want. As somebody that's been in the trade since high school, and looking at the agenda, what would be a session that you would go to if you weren't in the training, kind of navigating, putting this all together? And if you say Bill Russell's training on with Pulsem and with contractor commerce, I'd be okay with that. But selfish plug for our breakout session. But what would be the session that you would want to go to and see?
Man, you're putting me on a spot, because, you know, now I'm going to have to give favoritism to one coach over another in the different.
What's the general session? What's the keynote that's going down, so that we don't put in that?
Yeah. So we've got three. So Marshall Goldsmith is going to open our event. He's going to talk about what got you here won't get you there, which is very fitting, having gone over 30 years, which, by the way, just to pause right there for a second. What got you there won't get, or what got you here won't get you there. There's a lot of things that have changed over the years, but there is a lot of things that have stayed the same that we've simply just refused to implement. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you go through Super Meeting, because a lot of the things that you're going to hear are things that we've talked about in the past, but we just have failed to implement, and they can make a huge impact. So what got you there here won't get you there. From there, we also have Brian Bolio, who's we've had net members absolutely love him. He's going to talk to the economic forecast and how it's going to impact us in the trades. People just eat that up. Absolutely love Brian, and he is amazing. And then we're going to close the show with Ross Bernstein. He is kind of in the sports world, has written many books related to sports and teams. And he's going to be talking to us about the Champions Code. So those are our keynote speakers. And then what another thing that's great about this event, you know, a lot of times you'll get trainers up on stage who are doing pieces of content. This year, it's, in addition to our keynote speakers, it's all coaches. And we've gotten feedback in the past, you know, we wish we could see our coaches more. We wish we could see our coaches more. And this is our additional content from Nexstar is all coaches. So I'm super excited that the coaches are going to be up there working with members. In terms of the breakouts, you know, to your importance, I think that so much has changed in marketing over the past few years that I think maybe the most important breakout would be the marketing breakout. I think that our marketing team at Nexstar is fantastic, and I think, you know, if you like, even Google Ads is not what it was. Like when I left the business, Google Ads was it, right? And so things changed just so fast. I think that marketing would be the one. If I were running my business today, that's where I'd want to go.
Nobody asked me how the phone book worked when I started selling the phone book 25 years ago.
Right.
Listen, we have one final thing that we love to do, and it's called the final roar. And the final roar really gives you the opportunity to give a 30-second. This is what will make Super Meeting phenomenal. The final roar is yours.
One word: you. I mean, you are what will make Super Meeting phenomenal. And I think if we go into this event looking at not just me, what can I share? Me, what can I gain? Me, what can I do to change and improve? But what's going to make Super Meeting phenomenal is you. And this year is going to be great. We have over 800 people. It finally feels like we're going to get back to a little bit of normalcy here, given post-pandemic. Please say those words. So yeah, you.
I can't say enough about the venue that Nexstar has chosen at the JW in Austin. You can't say enough about it. The team that they've put together to celebrate 30 years of contractor excellence, both internally and externally, as far as the vendor partners that will be there, as far as the coaches. The dynamic of Nexstar has really been elevated under Julia and Carrie's leadership. And I can't wait to see where the next 5 years go. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of excitement that should be happening for the trades. It shouldn't be, hey, the pandemic was here, VC, PE money came in. I think it continues. I'm hedging my bets on it. And I really appreciate your time today, because I think that if the members take the 20+ minutes to listen to what you've had to say to make a successful super meeting, I think they're going to come out with a lot of great insight and information to help make their business run more efficiently and effectively and hit their revenue goals, most importantly. So Dave, thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing you down in Austin in about 8 days.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely. Thank you so much.